Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we learn all about the history of the universe from beginning to end. Well, yeah, from beginning to end. We've reached the 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Describes the anomalies of the Kali-yuga, which are profound, especially if you haven't heard them before. Written 5,000 years ago, what's going on right now in front of our eyes. But before we get into that, we'd like to welcome all of you out there in cyberspace. Hope you are happily still locked down if you are, or are still with us, even if the lockdown is, what's the word, gradually loosening. Let us hear Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram, Srila Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes what the Bhagavatam is, why we should read it, and helps us to go deeper. And we'll never be able to hear this enough, my humble opinion. That's why I do it every day. Sanatana Goswami's Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandotita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namosnume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Mad Sangin Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Mad Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atinati chatakado hanamuncha kadachin mam premna rit kantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me, always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, yesterday we read the first two verses of the 12th canto, plus the summary. So I'm going to go back for the benefit of those who might not have been here, and for our own benefit also. I want to hear all of the anomalies of the Kali-yuga all at one go. So at least we'll take as much time as it takes to go through the anomalies. And then there are other things at the end of the chapter. Okay. Canto 12, Chapter 2. The anomalies of the Kali-yuga. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami said, Then, O king, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali. And remember that Krishna just left this world. As soon as Krishna leaves this world, then the Kali-yuga commences. Technically, it might have been a little bit before, during the Battle of Kurukshetra. But for all practical purposes, we connect Krishna's departing with the beginning of Kali-yuga. Purport. During the present age, Kali-yuga, practically all desirable qualities will gradually diminish, as described in this verse. For example, dharma, which indicates a respect for higher authority that leads one to obey religious principles, will diminish. In the Western world, theologians have been unable to scientifically present the laws of God, or indeed God himself, and thus in Western intellectual history, a rigid dichotomy has arisen between theology and science. In an attempt to resolve this conflict, some theologians have agreed to modify their doctrines so that they conform not only to proven scientific facts, but even to pseudo-scientific speculations and hypotheses, which, though unproven, are hypocritically included within the realm of science. On the other hand, some fanatical theologians disregard the scientific method altogether and insist on the veracity of their antiquated sectarian dogmas. Thus, bereft of systematic Vedic theology, material science has moved into the destructive realm of gross materialism, while speculative Western philosophy has drifted into the superficiality of relativistic ethics and inconclusive linguistic analysis. With so many of the best Western minds dedicated to materialistic analysis, naturally, much of Western religious life, separated from the intellectual mainstream, is dominated by irrational fanaticism and unauthorized mystic and mystery cults. People have become so ignorant of the science of God that they often lump the Krishna consciousness movement in with this odd assortment of fanciful attempts at theology and religion. Thus, Dharma, or true religion, which is strict and conscious obedience to God's law, is diminishing. Satyam, truthfulness, is also diminishing, simply because people do not know what the truth is. Without knowing the absolute truth, one cannot clearly understand the real significance or purpose of life merely by amassing huge quantities of relative or hypothetical truths. Chama, tolerance, or forgiveness, is diminishing as well because there is no practical method by which people can purify themselves and thus become free of envy. Unless one is purified by chanting the holy names of the Lord in an authorized program of spiritual improvement, the mind will be overwhelmed by anger, envy, and all sorts of small-mindedness. Thus, daya, mercy, is also decreasing. All living beings are eternally connected by their common participation in the divine existence of God. When this existential oneness is obscured through atheism and agnosticism, people are not inclined to be merciful to one another. They cannot recognize their self-interest in promoting the welfare of other living beings. In fact, people are no longer even merciful to themselves. They systematically destroy themselves through liquor, drugs, tobacco, meat eating, sexual promiscuity, and whatever other cheap gratificatory processes are available to them. Because of all these self-destructive practices and the all-powerful influence of time, the average lifespan, ayur, is decreasing. Modern scientists, seeking to gain credibility among the mass of people, often publish statistics supposedly showing that science has increased the average duration of life. But these statistics do not take into account the number of people killed through the cruel practice of abortion. When we figure aborted children into the life expectancy of the total population, we find that the average duration of life has not at all increased in the age of Kali, but is rather decreasing drastically. Balam, bodily strength, is also decreasing. The Vedic literature states that 5,000 years ago, in the previous age, human beings and even animals and plants were larger and stronger. With the progress of the age of Kali, physical stature and strength will gradually diminish. Certainly, smriti, memory, is weakening. In former ages, human beings possessed superior memory, and they also did not encumber themselves with a terrible bureaucratic and technical society, as we have done. Thus, essential information and abiding wisdom were preserved without recourse to writing. Of course, in the age of Kali, things are dramatically different. Text 2. In Kali-yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities. And law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power. Purport. Sound familiar? In the age of Kali, a man is considered high class, middle class, or low class merely according to his financial status, regardless of his knowledge, culture, and behavior. In this age, there are many great industrial and commercial cities with luxurious neighborhoods reserved for the wealthy. On beautiful tree-lined roads within apparently aristocratic homes, it is not unusual to find many perverted, dishonest, and sinful activities taking place. According to Vedic criteria, a man is considered high class if his behavior is enlightened, and his behavior is considered enlightened if his activities are dedicated to promoting the happiness of all creatures. Every living being is originally happy because in all bodies there is an eternal spiritual spark that partakes of the divine conscious nature of God. When our original spiritual awareness is revived, we become naturally blissful and satisfied in knowledge and peace. An enlightened or educated man should endeavor to revive his own spiritual understanding, and he should help others experience the same sublime consciousness. The great Western philosopher Socrates stated that if a man is enlightened, he will automatically act virtuously, and Srila Prabhupada confirmed this fact. But in the Kali-yuga, this obvious truth is disregarded, and the search for knowledge and virtue has been replaced by a vicious, animalistic competition for money. Those who prevail become the, quote, top dogs, end quote, of modern society, and their consumer power grants them a reputation as the most respectable, aristocratic, and well-educated. This verse also states that in the age of Kali, brute strength, balameva, will determine law and justice. We should keep in mind that in the progressive Vedic culture, there was no artificial dichotomy between the spiritual and the public realms. All civilized people took it for granted that God is everywhere and that his laws are binding upon all creatures. The Sanskrit word dharma, therefore, indicates one's social or public obligation as well as one's religious duty. Thus, responsibly caring for one's family is dharma, and engaging in the loving service of God is also dharma. This verse indicates, however, that in the age of Kali, the principle of might makes right will hold sway. In the first chapter of this canto, we observed how this principle infiltrated India's past. Similarly, as the Western world achieved political, economic, and technological hegemony over Asian lands, bogus propaganda was disseminated to the effect that Indian, and in general all non-Western religion, theology, and philosophy are somehow primitive and unscientific, mere mythology and superstition. Fortunately, this arrogant, irrational view is now dissipating, and people all over the world are beginning to appreciate the staggering wealth of spiritual philosophy and science available in the Sanskrit literature of India. In other words, many intelligent people no longer consider traditional Western religion or empirical science, which has virtually superseded religion as the official Western dogma, necessarily authoritative merely. I'm going to read this sentence again. In other words, many intelligent people no longer consider traditional Western religion or empirical science, which has virtually superseded religion as the official Western dogma, necessarily authoritative merely because the West has politically and economically subdued other geographic and ethnic configurations of humanity. Thus, there is now hope that spiritual issues can be contested and resolved on a philosophical level and not merely by a crude test of arms. Next, this verse points out that the rule of law will be applied unequally to the powerful and the powerless. Already in many nations, justice is available only to those who can pay and fight for it. In a civilized state, every man, woman, and child must have equal and rapid access to a fair system of laws. In modern times, we sometimes refer to this as human rights. Certainly, human rights are one of the more obvious casualties of the age of Kali. Text 3. Men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction, and success in business will depend on deceit. Womanliness and manliness will be judged according to one's expertise in sex, and a man will be known as a Brahmana just by wearing a thread. Purport. Just as human life as a whole has a great and serious purpose, namely spiritual liberation, fundamental human institutions such as marriage and child rearing should also be dedicated to that great objective. Unfortunately, in the present age, the satisfaction of the sex impulse has become the overriding, if not the exclusive, reason for marriage. The sexual impulse, which induces the male and female of almost every species to combine physically, and in higher species also emotionally, is ultimately not a natural urge, because it is based on the unnatural identification of the self with the body. Life itself is a spiritual phenomenon. It is the soul that lives and gives apparent life to the biological machine called the body. Consciousness is the soul's manifest energy, and thus awareness itself is originally an entirely spiritual event. When life or consciousness is confined within a biological machine and falsely mistakes itself to be that machine, material existence occurs and sex desire arises. God intends human life to be an opportunity for us to rectify this illusory mode of existence and return to the vast satisfaction of pure, godly existence. But because our identification with the material body is a long historical affair, it is difficult for most people to immediately break free from the demands of the materially molded mind. Therefore, the Vedic scriptures prescribe sacred marriage, in which a so-called man and a so-called woman may combine in a regulated, spiritual marriage sheltered by overarching religious injunctions. In this way, the candidate for self-realization, who has selected family life, can derive adequate satisfaction for his senses and simultaneously please the Lord within his heart by obeying religious injunctions. The Lord then purifies him of material desire. In Kali-yuga, this deep understanding has been almost lost, and as stated in this verse, men and women combine like animals, solely on the basis of mutual attraction to bodies made of flesh, bone, membrane, blood, and so on. In other words, in our modern godless society, the weak, superficial intelligence of humanity rarely penetrates beyond the gross physical covering of the eternal soul, and thus family life, in most cases, has in most cases lost its higher purpose and value. A corollary point established in this verse is that in the age of Kali, a woman is considered a good woman if she is sexually attractive and indeed sexually efficient. Similarly, a sexually attractive man is a good man. The best example of this superficiality is the incredible attention 20th century people give to materialistic movie stars, music stars, and other prominent figures in the entertainment industry. In fact, pursuing sexual experiences with various types of bodies is similar to drinking old wine from new bottles. But few people in the Kali-yuga can understand this. Finally, this verse states that in the age of Kali, a man will become known as a priest or Brahmana merely by wearing ceremonial dress. In India, Brahmanas wear a sacred thread, and in other parts of the world, members of the priestly class have other ornaments and symbols. But in the age of Kali, the symbols alone will suffice to establish a person as a religious leader, despite his ignorance of God. Text 4. A person's spiritual order will be ascertained merely according to external symbols. And on that same basis, people will change from one spiritual order to the next. One who has no money will be unable to get justice, and one who is very clever at juggling words will be considered a learned scholar. And one who is very clever at juggling words will be considered a learned scholar. Purport. As the previous verse stated, that in the age of Kali, the priestly class will be recognized by external symbols alone. And this verse extends the same principle to the spiritual orders of society, namely the students, householders, retirees, and renunciants. One casualty of the age of Kali is an impartial judicial system, and thus today the poor often find themselves victimized by a system rife with high-priced lawyers and corrupt judges. Intellectuality is another casualty of the bewildering age of Kali. Modern so-called philosophers and scientists have created a technical, esoteric terminology for each branch of learning, and when they give lectures, people consider them learned simply because of their ability to speak that which no one else can understand. We'll read that one again. Modern so-called philosophers and scientists have created a technical, esoteric terminology for each branch of learning, and when they give lectures, people consider them learned simply because of their ability to speak that which no one else can understand. In Western culture, the Greek sophists were among the first to systematically argue for rhetoric and efficiency above wisdom and purity. And sophistry certainly flourishes in the 20th century. Modern universities have very little wisdom, though they possess a virtual infinity of technical data. Although many modern thinkers are fundamentally ignorant of the higher spiritual reality, they are, so to speak, good talkers, and most people simply don't notice their ignorance. Text 5. A person will be judged unholy if he does not have money, and hypocrisy will be accepted as virtue. Marriage will be arranged simply by verbal agreement, and a person will think he is fit to appear in public if he has merely taken a bath. Purport. Modern sociologists have demonstrated that those societies chiefly governed by the Protestant ethic, poverty is considered a sign of indolence. Modern sociologists have demonstrated that in those societies chiefly governed by the Protestant ethic, poverty is considered a sign of indolence. Dirtiness, stupidity, unholiness, immorality, and worthlessness. In other words, if you're poor, you're automatically those things. In a God-conscious society, however, many persons voluntarily decide to dedicate their lives not to material acquisition, but rather to the pursuit of knowledge and spirituality. Thus, a preference for the simple and the austere may indicate intelligence, self-control, and sensitivity to the higher purpose of life. Of course, in itself, poverty does not establish these virtues, but it may sometimes be the result of them. In the Kali-yuga, however, this possibility is often forgotten. The word damba indicates a self-righteous hypocrite, someone not so much concerned with being saintly as with appearing saintly. In the age of Kali, there is a rather large number of self-righteous, hypocritical religious fanatics claiming to have the only way, the only truth, and the only light. In many countries, this mentality has resulted in brutal repression of religious freedom and thus destroyed the opportunity for enlightened spiritual dialect. Fortunately, there are also many countries where there is a system of free religious expression. Even in these countries, however, self-righteous hypocrites consider sincere and saintly followers of other disciplines to be heathens and devils. Western religious fanatics are usually addicted to many bad habits, such as smoking, drinking, sex, gambling, and animal slaughter. Although the followers of the Krishna consciousness movement strictly avoid illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and animal slaughter, animal killing, and although they dedicate their lives to the constant glorification of God, self-righteous hypocrites claim that such strict austerity and devotion to God are tricks of the devil. Thus the sinful are promoted as religious, and the saintly are decried as demonic. This pathetic incapacity to grasp the most rudimentary criteria of spirituality is a prominent symptom of Kali-yuga. In this age, the institution of marriage will degenerate. Indeed, even a marriage certificate is sometimes cynically rejected as a mere piece of paper. Forgetting the spiritual purpose of marriage and misunderstanding sex to be the goal of family life, lusty men and women directly engage in sexual affairs without the troublesome formalities and responsibilities of a legal relationship. Such foolish people argue that sex is natural. But if sex is natural, pregnancy and childbirth are equally natural. And for the child, it is certainly natural to be raised by a loving father and mother, and in fact, to have the same father and mother throughout his life. Psychological studies confirm that a child needs to be cared for by both his father and his mother, and thus it is obviously natural for sex to be accompanied by a permanent marriage arrangement. Hypocritical people justify unrestricted sex by saying it is natural, but to avoid the natural consequence of sex, pregnancy, they use contraceptives, which certainly do not grow on trees. Indeed, contraceptives are not at all natural. This hypocrisy and foolishness abound in the age of Kali. The verse concludes by saying that people will neglect to ornament their bodies properly in the present age. A human being should decorate his body with various religious ornaments. Vaishnavas mark their bodies with tilak, blessed with the holy name of God. But in the age of Kali, religious and even material formalities are thoughtlessly discarded. Text 6. A sacred place will be considered to consist of no more than a reservoir of water located at a distance. And beauty will be thought to depend on one's hairstyle. Filling the belly will become the goal of life, and one who is audacious will be accepted as truthful. He who can maintain a family will be regarded as an expert man, and the principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. Profound. In India, there are many sacred places through which holy rivers flow. Foolish persons eagerly seek redemption from their sins by bathing in these rivers, but do not take instruction from learned devotees of the Lord who reside in such places. One should go to a holy place seeking spiritual enlightenment and not just for ritualistic bathing. In this age, people tirelessly arrange their hair in different styles, trying to enhance their facial beauty and sexuality. They do not know that actual beauty comes from within the heart, from the soul, and that only a person who is pure is truly attractive. As the difficulties of this age increase, filling one's belly will be the mark of success, and one who can maintain his own family will be considered brilliant in economic affairs. Religion will be practiced, if at all, only for the sake of reputation and without any essential understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 7. As the earth thus becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. Text 8. Losing their wives and properties to such avaricious and merciless rulers, who will behave no better than ordinary thieves, the citizens will flee to the mountains and forests. Text 9. Harassed by famine and excessive taxes, people will resort to eating leaves, roots, flesh, wild honey, fruits, flowers, and seeds. Struck by drought, they will become completely ruined. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam authoritatively describes the future of our planet. Just as a leaf disconnected from a plant or tree dries up, withers, and disintegrates, when human society is disconnected from the Supreme Lord, it withers up and disintegrates in violence and chaos. Despite our computers and rockets, if the Supreme Lord does not send rain, we shall all starve. Text 10. Or a little virus sent. Translation. The citizens will suffer greatly from cold, wind, heat, rain, and snow. They will be further tormented by quarrels, hunger, thirst, disease, and severe anxiety. Text 11. The maximum duration of life for human beings in Kali-yuga will become 50 years. 12 to 16. By the time the age of Kali ends, the bodies of all creatures will be greatly reduced in size, and the religious principles of followers of Varnashrama will be ruined. The path of the Vedas will be completely forgotten in human society, and so-called religion will be mostly atheistic. The kings will mostly be thieves. The occupations of men will be stealing, lying, and needless violence, and all the social classes will be reduced to the lowest level of Shudras. Cows will be like goats. Spiritual hermitages will be no different from mundane houses, and family ties will extend no further than the immediate bonds of marriage. Most plants and herbs will be tiny, and all trees will appear like dwarf shami trees. Clouds will be full of lightning. Homes will be devoid of piety, and all human beings will have become like asses. At that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on the earth. Acting with the power of pure spiritual goodness, he will rescue eternal religion. Purport. Significantly, these verses point out that most so-called religions in this age will be atheistic. Prashanda, Prachude, Dharme. In confirmation of the Bhagavatam's prediction, the United States Supreme Court has recently ruled that to be considered a religion, a system of belief need not recognize a supreme being. Also, many atheistic, voidistic belief systems, often imported from the Orient, have attracted the attention of modern atheistic scientists who expound on the similarities between Eastern and Western voidism in fashionable, esoteric books. These verses vividly describe many unsavory symptoms of the age of Kali. Ultimately, at the end of this age, Lord Krishna will descend as Kalki and remove the thoroughly demonic persons from the face of the earth. Text 17. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master of all moving and non-moving living beings, and the Supreme Soul of all, takes birth to protect the principles of religion and to relieve his saintly devotees from the reactions of material work. Text 18. Lord Kalki will appear in the home of the most eminent Brahmana of Shambhala village, the great soul, Vishnu Yasha. 19 and 20. Lord Kalki, the Lord of the universe, will mount his swift horse Devadatta and, sword in hand, travel over the earth, exhibiting his 8 mystic opulences and 8 special qualities of Godhead, displaying his unequaled effulgence, and riding with great speed. He will kill by the millions those thieves who have dared dress as kings. Purport. These verses describe the thrilling pastimes of Lord Kalki. Anyone would be attracted by the sight of a powerful, beautiful man riding on a wonderful horse at lightning speed, chastising and devastating cruel, demonic people with a sword in his hand. Of course, fanatical materialists may argue that this picture of Lord Kalki is a mere anthropomorphic creation of the human mind, a mythological deity created by people who need to believe in some superior being. But this argument is not logical, nor does it prove anything. It is merely the opinion of certain people. We need water, but that does not mean man creates water. We also need food, oxygen, and many other things that we do not create. Since our general experience is that our needs correspond to available objects existing in the external world, that we appear to need a Supreme Lord would tend to indicate that in fact there is a Supreme Lord. In other words, nature endows us with a sense of need in other words, nature endows us with a sense of need for things that actually exist and that are in fact necessary for our well-being. Similarly, we experience a need for God because we are in fact part of God and cannot live without Him. At the end of Kali-yuga, this same God will appear as the mighty Kalki avatar and beat the pollution out of the demons. Text 21. And one of the side effects or byproducts of this is that the natural qualities of the earth will rejuvenate themselves, heal. Just like now, we had this coronavirus, and people they have to go and stay in their houses, stay in the rooms of their houses, and they can't go out so much. And now automatically, the pollution in the big cities has gone down. The air has become clear. You can see the sun. In India, they can see the Himalayas for the first time, and since they can remember. Himalaya regions can be seen from a great distance, but in modern-day India, nobody sees them practically until you get right up next to them. And even then, you have to go up until you go up the higher regions where there's no pollution, and then you can see clearly their beauty, majestic beauty. And as I said yesterday or the day before, the animals are beginning to come out and run in the streets like they own the place. So here, the residents of cities and towns will feel the breezes carrying the most sacred fragrance. After the impostor kings have been killed, the residents of the cities and towns will feel the breezes carrying the most sacred fragrance of the sandalwood paste and other decorations of Lord Vasudeva, and their minds will thereby become transcendently pure. Purport. Nothing can surpass the sublime experience of being dramatically rescued by a great hero who happens to be the Supreme Lord. The death of the demons at the end of Kali-yuga is accompanied by fragrant spiritual breezes, and thus the atmosphere becomes most enchanting. 22. When Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in their hearts in his transcendental form of goodness, the remaining citizens will abundantly repopulate the earth. Text 23. When the Supreme Lord has appeared on earth as Kalki, the maintainer of religion, Satya Yuga will begin, and human society will bring forth progeny in the mode of goodness. When the moon, the sun, and Brihaspati, that means Jupiter, are together in the constellation Karkata, that's Cancer, and all three enter simultaneously into the lunar mansion Pusha, at that exact moment, the age of Satya, or Krita, will begin. Science, spiritual science. 25. Thus I have described all the kings, past, present, and future, who belong to the dynasties of the sun and the moon. From your birth, that means from the birth of Parikshit Maharaj, from your birth up to the coronation of King Nanda, 1,150 years will pass. And I think I'll stop right here. This is a good place to stop. We've heard about the anomalies of the Kali-yuga and how they end by the appearance of Kalki, and the earth will revive itself, heal itself, when enough of the demoniac population has been killed. And thus the history of the universe proceeds. So I'll stop here. We have a few minutes before our hour is up. If anyone wants to give us the blessings of his or her reflections on the subject, please bless us. Or want further discussion on any points, whatever. Radharaman's back and he's about to say something, so let's get the open mic over to him, please. Thank you.
I just had a sort of a realization, which maybe you can confirm is either bona fide or not bona fide, but I mean, I've heard things like this in different talks of Prabhupada, and Science of Self-Realization, I think, has things, one of those books, either SSR, Journey of Self-Discovery, but what I found in the last couple of days is that I've been here, including tonight, is that there's really something very special about hearing these things in the Srimad Bhagavatam itself.
Oh yes, absolutely. When we hear from the authority, especially the Supreme Authority, then our faith awakens, and we're empowered to understand and apply and see. It opens our eyes. This is what it means. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya. That the spiritual authorities, and the supreme spiritual authority is Krishna, and especially Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami was so elevated that when he showed up, to talk to Maharaj Parikshit, all the most elevated sages, rishis, and great personalities from all over the universe converged there because they knew how great a personality, Parikshit Maharaj was, and they wanted to be there at his disappearance because it was a very auspicious moment. And they were discussing among themselves with him what the best thing for him to do was. And they couldn't decide, because the fact is that different scriptures, as described in the beginning of the first canto of Bhagavatam, one of the questions that was asked of the sages of Naimisharanya, of Sutta Goswami, was, please explain to us the ultimate meaning of the scriptures, because they appear to have conflicting conclusions sometimes. And then, so anyway, that also was going on when Shukadev, before Shukadev arrived. And when Shukadev arrived, everybody looked at him and bowed down, except for Vyasadeva and Narada, maybe a couple of others. Everyone else just bowed down. They could, just by seeing his transcendental form, they accepted him as authority. And therefore their hearts opened, their ears opened, and they could hear the Bhagavatam. So therefore, your point is very well taken, because it says in the text itself that when Krishna did leave, the shelter was transferred to the Bhagavatam. So it's natural to feel the direct potency from the Bhagavatam. And all the Rasa Shastras and all the commentaries are coming from the Bhagavatam. You got something over there?
Something from Yadutama.
Okay, Yadutama. Hare Krishna.
He says, Dear Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. How could one's faith not grow exponentially after hearing these prophetic verses? Over the past few weeks, many devotees here in Russia have been talking about putting more focus building farm communities. What are your feelings about this, especially in light of tonight's reading?
Well, it's an excellent idea. Srila Prabhupada, I was fortunate enough to be in Gita Nagari in 1976 on the farm community when Prabhupada visited there, when he came to attend the Rath Yatra, 1976, great epic Rath Yatra down Fifth Avenue for the first time. And he came out to the Gita Nagari farm, and his health wasn't so good, but he was, and so there weren't that many devotees there. It was a very special situation. And he was talking about this, and he was talking about how he wanted to come and teach us how to live naturally, in rural communities. And he said 50% of my work has been done to establish the temples, to teach the process of devotional service as taught by Lord Chaitanya, but also in order to exemplify the teachings, high living, simple thinking and high living. He wanted us to start self-sufficient communities, protect the cows, live off the earth, and show how it can be done, and to have more time to spend chanting Hare Krishna and hearing these holy scriptures. Prabhupada told us that in the future, he didn't say when, didn't say how long it would take, but judging from what's happening right now, there's undoubtedly more people that are interested, if they knew what we stood for, if they knew what we were teaching, and not that many people do. We've distributed a lot of books, and many people are finding out something, but still, in relation to the total population of the earth, it's still a small percentage of people who have understood what the purpose of life, human life is. But Prabhupada used to say, example is better than precept. So if we have communities where devotees can live on the farm and live really comfortably, and at the same time ecstatically chant and dance, and take prasadam taken from the earth by their own agricultural activities, then it will go a long way to helping revive the spiritual culture within the Kali-yuga, which is what's supposed to happen in this 10,000 years since Lord Chaitanya appeared until 10,000 years after that. You know, the earth will become more Krishna conscious, and sometimes maybe devotees may think, how is that possible? There's so few devotees, and now look, just a virus and the whole thing changes up, turns upside down, topsy-turvy. So it's really important for us to get these books out there, and also to start up communities where people can come and take shelter off the land, learn how to live off the land, and get away from these demoniac, bureaucratic, leaders who are just creating hell on earth in these major cities. That's what Prabhupada told us.
This is from Pranata Karuna Prabhu.
Jai Pranata Karuna, Hare Krishna. Nice to hear from you.
He says, Hare Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. On the argument that we have natural needs for things that exist, water, light, and so on, the atheistic person may argue that our need for God is created, that it is an artificial need itself. How do we explain that we have a natural need for the Lord rather than for sense gratification or whatever idea they may present? Thank you very much.
Well, try existing without water. Where'd the water come from? Their philosophy is based on the concept that material atoms create everything. Not only do they not accept the existence of God, they don't accept the existence of the soul. They don't accept the existence of consciousness. So if you look somebody in the eye and you say to them, "Are you conscious?" And if they say no, move on to the next person, because that person can't hear anything. Then you're talking to an animal. Of course, you can chant Hare Krishna and get them to chant. Even animals can chant sometimes and dance, but Lord Chaitanya did. There's all kinds of examples, even nowadays, of animals that have become fortunate enough to be with devotees and families, and they kind of get attached to the devotees' activities. Shivananda Saint adopted one that started following and ended up. And anyway. Yeah, so what can we say to them? People who are that dull, there's not much you can say to them, because they can't understand anything. So the best thing to do is get them to chant, get them to hear, and get them to take prasadam. And by becoming purified from those activities, eventually they'll be able to hear. And of course we try with everyone to try to explain them the basics of spiritual life. But it all comes from this fundamental principle that we're not material, we're spiritual. We're not the body, we're a spiritual being. And the material elements that form this machine that we have been given are not conscious, they're inert. The material energy is inert. Like this table or this computer, it's inert. It can't do anything without the touch of a conscious being. So we have to, Prabhupada uses these very simple examples. We have to explain the simplest example to them, the common denominator that anybody can understand. You dream at night, you're dreaming the same kind of emotions and sights and sounds and whatever as you see it now in your waking state, but you're laying in the bed and you're seeing all these things and doing all these things. So you're doing those things in your mental body and your subtle body. And then when you are in this physical plane, gross physical plane, you do the same things in the gross body. But who's actually experiencing them? Who's actually feeling them? When your gross body is in the bed, you're still experiencing the same emotions, the same feelings. So who's the perceiver? Who's actually perceiving? That basic truth, spoken again and again in the Gita and in the Bhagavatam and in all the revealed scriptures, has to be accepted first. And the fact is that we don't want to suffer. We don't want to get old. We don't want to get disease. We don't want to die. Why? That's the basic truth of spiritual science that hardly anyone even thinks about. They're just so busy trying to collect things and trying to rub up against other things and other people and other whatever. And now they're being forced to distance themselves. And, anyway, material nature is helping us, by putting people in this awkward situation. Some people will become more receptive, and we have to seek those people out and put our energy there. Don't waste our energy in people who are so materialistic they can't understand anything. Then you just waste your energy always trying to do that, and you put just a little energy into persons who can understand, and they wake up and flourish. Just like if you want to grow a garden, you don't go to a patch of sand and grow your garden in a patch of sand. You put your seeds in fertile soil. So hear and chant and wait and watch the eyes of the people and see who lights up and go and talk to them. Invest your energy wisely and judge a thing by the result, by the fruit. And never be disappointed. If the results don't come right away, never to be disappointed. So it's not so much what we say, it's the consciousness we have. It's the consciousness in the quality of our sound is dependent on our consciousness. So read the books and assimilate them. Assimilate them means practically apply them into our own lives. And then the quality of the sound that we speak, and our behavior and our aura will attract and help people. That's more important than what we say. And just repeat what you hear in Prabhupada's books, and you'll be a perfect example of Vaishnava, perfect preacher. But if we don't follow, and we don't understand, and we keep speaking things that we don't understand, then we will be implicated further and further in material illusion. Yes.
This is from Doyle Nitai.
Haribol Doyle Nitai. How are things going in Belgium? I hear they're going to open up.
He says, respected Srila Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. All glories to your holiness. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Some days back, in a unsought for confrontational discussion with a customer of scientific background, he accused religionists of exactly what the devotees just accused materialistic scientists of in the purport to
to Srimad Bhagavatam 12:2, that they include unproven hypotheses within their teachings. If you so wish, please share how you advise we respond to such an argument. Thank you, your servant, Dayanita.
Don't waste your time. Give them a cake, give them a sandwich, offer it with love, and send him on his way. And if you have to say something like, well, I can see that the sun comes up every single day from the same place at the same time. And we're all engaging in our activities accordingly. I can see that the sun shines on the ocean and puts the water up into the air by evaporation and distills it, takes all the salt out of it, and then it comes down in pure, distilled water, without which we can't live. So those things are coming from God, so we can see God. In the Gita it says, I am the light of the sun and the moon. The fragrance of the earth has a fragrance. And you put the right seed in, and every time you put a tomato plant out. So if it's just by chance, like the scientists say, how come sometimes you can't put the tomato plant in and get a rose garden or get a mango or something else? Those are laws. Law of gravity, laws of thermodynamics, all these fancy names that the scientists give the laws. But whose laws are they? You can't change those laws. You may build up your, big city, but if a tsunami comes, it will just wipe it off the earth. A little virus comes and turns the whole planet upside down. Why? Just by chance? If you think that that's just by chance, have it your way. If you think that the conclusion of the scriptures are just mythology or unproven, and you think that the scientific is proven, but both of us are going to leave our bodies. You're going to leave your body. Where are you going? What are you going to do? Okay, so you say, nothing's going to happen, everything's going to be finished. And I say, it isn't going to be finished. You're a soul, eternal, and you're going to go to another place, and what you're doing now will depend on where you go and what you do. You act now when you're a young man to get educated so that you can have a better life in the future. So if you say, yes, that's just what you think, that's just your faith, and I say to you, that's just your faith that nothing happens after death. I say that the soul is eternal, and therefore when people get together in funerals and lament, they lament the passing away of the person, but the body's still there, or the ashes, or something, but the person's not there. That means you've never even seen the person. That means you're not even acknowledging that consciousness exists. So all these things reveal you to be ignorant. And if you say, okay, you can't prove that there's an eternal soul and you can go back to the spiritual world or whatever, or take another birth, better birth, and I can't prove that nothing happens, or you can't prove that nothing happens. So we say, all right, so let's just take the teachings. In one, there's nothing. And in the other, there's a better life, or even an eternal life, full of bliss and knowledge. So take your pick. Will I work for something that's ends up nothing, or will I, work for something that will give me a better life? Why not? What do you got to lose? You're going to lose anything anyway. Why not act in a way that the air stays clean and the water stays clean and all the animals and birds and plants can thrive? Now there's this virus and all the human beings had to go in the house, and all the animals are out there like having parties, they're getting together and dancing down the streets, moose, kangaroos, goats. So if you can't take those arguments, and if they still go away in a huff and angry, just be happy. Pop in one of your wife's cupcakes or sandwiches and have a good time. And distribute them and try to purify people's hearts. What else can you do? What else can you say? Mother Nature. There's a mother, there's a child. It means there has to be a father. That is the law of nature. So they talk about nature being the mother, and all the living beings, they're the children coming from the earth, or coming from bodies made of earth. So where's the father? No one can say when there's a woman, a mother and a child, that there is no father. You can say you don't know who the father is, but you cannot say that there is no father. Period. Therefore, there is evidence that there's God, who is the Father of all living beings. So there's truth rings true when you look at the world and you listen to the Bhagavad Gita. Aham bija pradapita. I am the seed-giving Father of all living beings. You can see it with the eyes of knowledge that it's true. That's science, and it never changes. But your science is changing all the time. You develop a product, you inject it into people. Oh, oops, by the way, that's going to cause this kind of disease, or this byproduct, or this kind of side effect. But don't worry, we'll make another pill and it'll save you. So this is materialistic society. They're creating problems, and then they're solving them, trying to solve them, and they're saying that we're your saviors, so therefore worship us. But you got to worship somebody. Everybody does. So you worship, your musician, or your scientist, or your politician, or your athlete, and we'll worship Krishna. What do you got against us? What's the big deal? Okay.
Rati Manjari.
Okay, Rati, Haribo.
She says, but they can say, since everything will be finished when I die, I got to work hard to enjoy now.
We enjoy now. What do you think we don't enjoy? We're eating nicely. We're not working like an ass. What's your problem? Why don't you come and join us, and you don't have to work in a factory, beat yourself to death. Come here and chant Hare Krishna, and we'll feed you, take care of you. All you have to do is just follow 4 regulative principles. But you can't do that, can you? Because you're thinking that's all there is. If you don't have sex illicitly, if you don't eat meat, if you don't gamble, if you don't intoxicate yourself, then what is there to life? We say there isn't just nothing at the end. That's what we say. That's what Krishna says. So they may say, no, to me there's just nothing. Well, whatever you think, whether you think it's this or whether you think it's that, the truth, it will be revealed to you. If you don't believe in God, you will seek God at the time of death in the form of time. Of course, people are that far gone, there's probably nothing you can say to them, like I said before. So don't waste your time. Find nice people to talk to and get the ecstasy of glorifying Krishna and seeing people wake up and become happy. You got a little coronavirus that just came because somebody ate a bat or something in some wet market somewhere in China, and they'll catch anything and sell it, and they'll eat it. Anything. Then you can go and you can see online what the pictures are, what kind of creatures they sell there, and they're just eating. They don't know what's going to happen. It's only for their tongue. I'm enjoying now. Oh, really? Now what's happening? Oh, I'm sorry, your whole city of 40 million people are locked down. You can't do anything. There's a lot of happiness in that. And you can go on and on and on, but let those who have ears hear. If they don't have any ears, why are you wasting your breath? Of course, we try to preach to everybody, but if we see that they're so dull and they're so covered that they can't see the simple truths that we're speaking, that you are a conscious being, that you are the same person you were when you were a little boy or a little girl, and your body's changed, every element is changed, every cell is changed. You do have a different body. That's science. It doesn't make any difference if you're Christian or you're Hindu or you're Muslim or you're Jewish. You still bleed the same. You still cry if somebody comes to kill you. You still cry if your child gets taken away. Law of nature. If you learn what the laws of nature are and follow them, then you'll become happier. Don't believe it? Then Hare Krishna. Everybody gets what they pay for. Okay, I gotta go now. It's actually 25 after 8. I've been going for an hour and 25 minutes. I'm way over my quota of chair time. Thanks very much, Rati, and everyone else out there for your lovely reflections and questions, giving me an opportunity to repeat what I heard from Srila Prabhupada and Srimad Bhagavatam and put it in a way that maybe we can help us to get arguments that we can use to help relieve the burden of the anxiety that the world is always feeling, but particularly feeling now. And we'll see you tomorrow for more of the same, the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Saturday is the reading still.
What's tomorrow, Saturday?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Tomorrow we won't be reading, we'll be reading on Sunday. So I'll see you on Sunday. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. See you on Sunday, same time, 7 o'clock, English time. Daylight savings time. See you tomorrow. Hari Bol.